"You have a camera in your office," the little girl whispered. "But it's not yours." Carter William froze. His hand hovered over the keyboard, the soft clatter of keystrokes dying mid-word. The afternoon sunlight spilled through the tall windows behind him, casting warm light over polished walnut shelves and the flickering blue of his workstation. But none of that warmth touched the space between them, now not after those words. He turned slowly, as if the air had thickened around him. Maya stood there, half hidden in the doorway, her small fingers gripping the edge of the mahogany desk like it was the only thing anchoring her. "Maya?" His voice was careful, too careful. The 9-year-old looked up at him, dark eyes wide, shoulders drawn in, and stepped closer. Her sneakers barely made a sound on the thick rug. Her voice dropped lower as she leaned in, close enough that he could feel her breath warm against his ear. "It's behind the painting," she said. "The one Miss Vanessa brought." He blinked. In the 6 months since the accident took her parent, she's brother and sister-in-law, Maya had hardly spoken more than a sentence at a time. She watched. She listened. She kept to herself like a shadow pressed against the wall. Carter had given her everything. The best schools, a private therapist, a room full of soft lights and books and gadgets. But he hadn't given her this. He hadn't earned this kind of voice from her. "What do you mean, a camera?" he asked. Maya glanced at the painting in question, a muted abstract of a city skyline, hanging just above his bookcase. It was tasteful, unobtrusive. He remembered when Vanessa had brought it over her smile as she teased him about needing a little softness in his workspace. "I saw it blink at night," Maya said, "and I scanned it. The signal doesn't match any of your devices." Carter's stomach tensed. "Scanned it?" She nodded. "I used my tablet. I ran a network trace when I couldn't sleep." He leaned back slowly in his chair, regarding her in silence. Mayatha, quiet, observant little girl who barely spoke to adults, unless Prest had just told him something no adult in his security team had picked up on. And she wasn't even supposed to be in here. "Maya, how long have you known?" "Since last week." Her voice was small but steady. "But I wasn't sure you'd believe me." Carter's throat tightened. Vanessa had hung that painting 4 weeks ago. She'd said it was a gift to celebrate his deal with Homeland Security. She'd kissed him just beneath it, whispered that she was proud of him. They'd eaten wine-poached salmon while it watched silently from the wall. He stood. With slow, deliberate steps, he crossed the room and lifted the canvas from its hooks. It came away easily, revealing smooth drywall just below the top molding, a black circle no bigger than a pencil eraser, a lens, a hidden, live camera. His jaw locked. "Maya, go wait outside for a minute," he said quietly. "Number." The firmness in her voice stopped him. She wasn't being disobedient, she was being brave. She was still holding on to something, information, maybe, or fear. Either way, she wasn't going anywhere. He gave a slow nod and motioned her closer. "All right, sit." Maya perched on the edge of the leather guest chair, hands folded in her lap. She didn't fidget, didn't squirm, just looked at him with a gaze far older than any child should wear. "I checked the signal history. It started right after Vanessa hung the painting," she said. "But now there are others, smaller ones, in the living room, in the den. I think someone's listening to you." Carter felt a chill crawl up the back of his neck. He stared at the wall where the painting had been, his mind racing through the past month, Vanessa's sudden interest in his schedule, the way she lingered near his desk, her insistence on tidying up his office herself, her habit of arriving with coffee just when he needed it, always at the perfect moment. The coincidences had been too perfect, and now they weren't coincidences at all. Maya waited, quietly, watching his face. He turned to her. "You've been carrying this alone?" She nodded once. He let out a breath, long and unsteady. "I believe you," he said. She blinked. It was the first time she looked uncertain. "You do?" "I should have believed you the first time you said it." The corners of her mouth didn't move, but her shoulders softened just a little, and that said everything. Carter reached for the painting again. The camera sat embedded in the frame's curve, so small it could have been decorative. But it wasn't decorative. It was deliberate. It was betrayal. And if Vanessa planted one, how many more were hidden? "Maya," he said, voice low, "I want you to keep watching, but only if you feel safe. Can you do that?" She nodded. He rested a hand gently on her shoulder. "From now on, we do this together. No more secrets. She looked up at him, and for the first time since she'd arrived in his home, she smiled. Not the kind of smile that meant she was being polite. The kind that meant someone was finally listening. And Carter, now fully alert and furious in a way he hadn't felt in years, turned toward his desk and opened a new, secure terminal. Vanessa would be home soon. And this time, he'd be the one watching. If you felt that shift, if Maya's quiet courage and Carter's rising fury stirred something in you, then don't leave just yet. Hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, what would you do if your own home was listening in? Because this story, it's only just beginning. The wind outside Carter's estate shifted, tugging at the tall trees that lined the perimeter like sentries. Inside, the air had grown still dense with unspoken understanding and something colder, deeper. The end of illusion. Vanessa would be home in 27 minutes. Carter knew this because her routine was precise. She always left her boutique consulting firm at 5:35 p.m., stopped for a decaf soy latte from the cafe 2 blocks over, and arrived back at the house at 6:12, give or take a minute. She would smile, hang her coat on the antique hook she insisted on installing near the front door, and come to find him, always with a casual, "I missed you," and a kiss that tasted like lavender and control. He stared at the painting now resting on the floor, frame slightly cracked from where he had wrenched it down. The camera lens stared back at him, lifeless yet damning. Maya sat on the far end of the couch, her legs tucked under her, tablet open in her lap. Her tiny fingers swiped quickly across the screen, bringing up signals Carter's system hadn't flagged. Not once. "How many?" he asked without looking up. "5 that don't belong," she replied. "2 in your office, 1 in the living room, 1 in the guest bedroom, and," she hesitated, "1 in your master suite." Carter inhaled slowly through his nose. It wasn't anger, not yet. Anger was still an emotional luxury. This was calculation, cool and precise. "You've seen them all transmitting?" "Yes. I mapped their activity. Most of them are quiet during the day, but between midnight and 4 a.m., they all go active for short bursts. Which means someone's collecting data in intervals," Carter muttered. "Batch transmitting, trying to stay off grid crawlers." He rubbed a hand over his jaw. That kind of protocol wasn't amateur work. This wasn't some private eye hired by a jealous ex or a tabloid leak. This was targeted, high-level surveillance, the kind he'd designed his entire company to prevent. And it was happening under his roof. He rose from the desk and crossed to the tall oak cabinet on the wall. With a flick of his fingerprint and a silent swipe on the keypad, the panel slid open to reveal a matte black server tower humming gently against the wood. He pulled a secondary cable, connecting Maya's tablet directly into the diagnostic port. "You're in," he said. Maya looked up, startled. "You're giving me access?" "I trust you," he replied. "Apparently more than I trust my own damn firewall." Her eyes widened. But she didn't smile this time. She just nodded and got to work. While she traced signal paths through layers of digital noise, Carter moved back to his desk and accessed the central security dashboard. Every camera, every mic, every access log since the system's installation came up like a digital nervous system. Vanessa had access limited, of course, but that hadn't stopped her from supplementing it. He flipped through motion logs. Several entries stood out, movements triggered in rooms no one should have entered. Guest bedroom on Wednesday, living room at 3 a.m. last Sunday, and 1 log with no source signature at all. Blank. Whoever had placed these devices didn't just want to spy on him. They wanted to do it without leaving fingerprints. A knock at the door startled both of them. "Josephine." Carter exhaled and opened the door to his longtime housekeeper and family friend. Her silver-gray bun was tight, her pressed blouse spotless, but her eyes narrowed immediately when she saw his face. "Something's wrong," she said, not asking. "Yes," Carter replied. He gestured for her to come inside and quietly closed the door behind her. Maya didn't even look up as Josephine entered. She was too deep in code, face aglow with reflected blue light. Carter leaned in and spoke low. "Vanessa may have planted surveillance devices. Maya found them." Josephine blinked once. "Where?" "Everywhere." Her face hardened. "I knew something felt off. She's always lingering, always knows too much, and she talks to that CFO of yours too often." Carter turned sharply. "Miles?" Josephine nodded. "He came by unannounced twice last week when you were out. Said he was checking paperwork. Vanessa acted like it was nothing, but I caught them whispering in the den. She didn't know I was listening. Carter's pulse ticked up. Miles Rennis' right hand, his best friend since MIT. Could he have? He didn't finish the thought. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "I need you to do something for me. Anything. When Vanessa gets here, act normal, like we know nothing." Josephine's mouth tightened. "I've been playing polite longer than she's been alive, son. I can pretend just fine." Carter gave a brief nod. Maya's voice cut through the room. "I found something." Both adults turned. "There's a signal hub. All the devices route to it. But it's not here," she said. "It's off-site, somewhere in downtown Austin." Carter moved beside her and looked at the map she'd generated. A red pulse blinked on a building address tied to a small private storage firm with no obvious affiliation. "Whoever's behind this is good," Maya murmured. "They don't transmit constantly. It's like they're doing packet shadows, slivers of data, hard to trace." "And yet you traced it," Carter said. She shrugged. "I learned from watching you." Before he could answer, the front door opened and closed softly. Footsteps. He could hear her laugh float down the hall, familiar, warm, rehearsed. Carter closed the server panel in a smooth motion and locked the tablet inside a drawer with Maya's quick cooperation. Josephine straightened her skirt and gave Maya a brief nod before heading back to the main hall, her expression once again composed. "Carter?" Vanessa's voice called. "Where are you, babe?" "In the office," he said, walking toward the doorway. Maya slipped quietly to the side hallway just as Vanessa appeared, arms full with takeout bags and a bottle of wine peeking out of her purse. "There's my genius," she said, leaning in to kiss his cheek. He let her. She looked around. "Smells like server heat in here. You working hard or hardly working?" He smiled tightly. "Just running diagnostics. A few glitches in the system." Vanessa paused, eyes scanning the room with that trademark playful curiosity. "Anything serious?" "Not really," he said, "but I'll probably do a full reset later. Need any help?" "No," he replied. "You've helped enough." She laughed. "Well, if I didn't know better, I'd think that sounded pointed." He didn't answer. She placed the food down and stretched, the movement slow and deliberate. Comfortable. At home. Tout confortable. He watched her for another long beat, noticing the way she slid her hand along the edge of his desk right above the drawer that now held the only thing she didn't want him to see. "We should eat before it gets cold," she said, turning. "I'll be out in a bit," he replied. She blew him a kiss and walked off, humming a tune that didn't reach her eyes. When the door closed behind her, Carter sat down slowly and pressed his hands together. His temple throbbed. He didn't want this to be true, but it was. He could feel it beneath her affection, her perfect timing, her feigned sweetness. She was watching him, using him, and she wasn't working alone. Behind him, Maya stepped out of the shadowed hallway. "Uncle Carter?" she asked. He turned. "Can I help with the reset later?" He stared at her for a moment, then nodded. "You already are." The house had gone still again, the kind of quiet that only came after a storm or just before one. Carter sat in the darkened office long after Vanessa had gone upstairs for her nightly bath. The scent of her lavender body oil still lingered faintly in the air, as if even her presence left strategic residue. The wine had remained untouched on the kitchen counter. The food she brought had gone cold. Neither he nor Maya had the appetite to eat after what they knew now, and what they still didn't. Maya sat cross-legged on the floor by the server cabinet, a blanket wrapped around her small shoulders, the glow of a secondary monitor reflecting off her round glasses. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, silent and focused, analyzing packets Carter wouldn't have expected even a junior engineer to notice. At some point, Josephine brought them both mugs of hot chamomile tea. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. The look she gave Carter as she closed the office door said more than words. "I've seen women like her before. You're not crazy. Keep going." Carter leaned back in his chair and studied the ceiling. He'd been trained to detect patterns, dissect threats, build defenses tighter than a nuclear vault, and still, Vanessa had gotten through. She had used him. Used this home. Used Maya. He clenched his fists. "Got something," Maya said, her voice low, but charged with energy. He wheeled his chair over beside her. "Show me." I mapped her cloud activity. Not her personal account, she's too smart for that. But the devices she planted are syncing to a private server, hosted offshore, masked behind a shell company in the Caymans. Maya clicked through tabs. Here's the IP trace. I ran it against known activity logs. She brought up a dataset Carter knew well. Prototype access logs from his own system blueprints, algorithm test results, beta encryption routines. This is yours, she said. And this, she tapped another tab, is where it ends up. Carter stared at the second screen. He recognized the formatting. It was Orion Tech's system interface. Proprietary, internal, confidential. The watermark in the corner was unmistakable. Vanessa wasn't freelancing. She was an agent, a corporate spy. She was working for his greatest competitor. How the hell, he muttered. I built firewalls to stop nation-states. And she? Maya glanced up, her voice quieter. She got in because you trusted her, not because she outcoded you. Carter didn't respond. The truth sat heavy in his chest. She was right. The breach hadn't come through the network. It had come through the heart. Is Miles involved? He asked, almost afraid of the answer. Maya hesitated, then pulled up a video file. It's grainy, she said, but I think it's enough. The footage was time-stamped 3 nights ago. It showed the living room, angled slightly from the bookshelf a view Carter didn't remember authorizing. Vanessa walked in first, carrying a thin silver case. Moments later, Miles followed, glancing over his shoulder like a man not quite convinced he was alone. In the video, Vanessa placed the case on the table, opened it, and extracted a USB drive. Miles said something no audio, but his posture said everything. Confident, familiar, impatient. She handed him the drive, and he nodded before tucking it into his blazer. Then they embraced. Not like friends. Like co-conspirators. Carter leaned back, swallowing hard. I need air, he said. He stepped out onto the back deck, the cold biting more than he expected. The sky was clear stars cutting through the dark like sharpened pins. The pool lights shimmered gently, untouched. 6 months ago, he'd adopted Maya, hoping to give her safety, stability, something that resembled a home, but she had ended up protecting him, watching over him while he played the role of guardian. He heard the sliding door behind him. Uncle Carter? Maya's voice was small. He turned. You should be sleeping. She came out barefoot, pulling the blanket tighter. I couldn't. He crouched and rested a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, he said softly. You shouldn't have to carry this. I wanted to tell you sooner. Her voice cracked. But I didn't want you to think I was trying to ruin things. He frowned. Why would you think that? Because she makes you happy. You smile when she's here. You laugh. And I thought, maybe if I told you, you'd think I was trying to break that. Carter closed his eyes. The pain that pierced through him wasn't from betrayal. It was from realizing that a 9-year-old had silenced herself for his comfort. She'd chosen his feelings over her own safety. No one should ever ask you to do that, he said, pulling her into a hug. Least of all me. Maya didn't say anything for a moment. Then, muffled against his shoulder, she asked, So what now? He pulled back and looked her square in the eyes. Now we flipped the game. They went back inside, both of them colder, but clearer. Carter opened a hidden drawer in his office desk and pulled out a phone secure, unregistered, and used only for emergencies. He typed a number from memory. Read, he said when the line clicked. I need you. The voice on the other end was clipped. Ex-military. Give me a time and a location. Tonight. Here. Quiet surveillance. No uniforms. Understood. He hung up. Maya tilted her head. Who's Reed? Old friend. Private security. He's handled dirty corporate takedowns before. Carter's voice was low, measured. We'll give Vanessa and Miles what they want. Let them think they're getting everything they came for, but we're going to control what they take. Maya's eyes lit with understanding. You want to feed them false data. Exactly. And while they're celebrating, we'll be recording everything. He brought up the company's prototype interface and started crafting fake build logs, misleading algorithm structures, and backdoor-laced software packages. Maya helped, inserting trigger codes that would log every machine accessing the files. As they worked, Josephine returned, carrying a metal tin of oatmeal cookies and a fresh mug of cocoa. You two look like you're preparing for war, she said, setting the tin down. We are, Carter replied. She didn't flinch. just poured the cocoa, handed Maya a cookie, and said, "Well then, you'll need sugar." It was almost dawn when Carter finished building the decoy server. Maya had long since nodded off in the armchair, her tablet still resting against her chest. He looked over at her, a blanket draped over her small frame, and something inside him shifted. This wasn't just about stopping Vanessa or protecting trade secrets. This was about protecting the only person who had protected him when he wasn't looking, and making damn sure the people who violated that, who tried to use this family, this home, as a battlefield, never got another chance. He dimmed the lights, glanced once more at the quiet hallway upstairs where Vanessa still slept, and whispered to the silence, "You have no idea who you messed with." Morning would come soon, and with it, the beginning of the end. The sun rose behind a thick veil of winter clouds, casting the entire estate in muted gray. Vanessa padded into the kitchen wearing Carter's navy robe, humming softly to herself as if the night before hadn't shattered the walls around her. She poured coffee, added almond milk, always kept it stocked for her, and sat at the island, scrolling through her phone like any other fiancé starting her morning. But Carter saw it now. The controlled movements, the slightly too casual poses, the way she positioned herself in front of the window, just in line with one of the newly discovered hidden cameras. Every gesture was performance. He entered the kitchen without a word, dressed in a simple charcoal sweater and jeans, his expression unreadable. "Morning, love," Vanessa said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sleep okay?" "Eventually," Carter said, opening the fridge. "You seemed tense last night." She sipped her coffee. "Everything all right at work?" "Just thinking through a few problems," he said evenly. "But I think I've got a solution now." Her smile sharpened just a little, as if sensing a shift. "Good. I'd hate for anything to ruin the holidays." She leaned in to kiss him, but Carter turned slightly, offering only his cheek. She hesitated just for a blink and then recovered with a laugh. "Grumpy morning man," noted. Carter checked his watch. "I'll be heading into the city for a few meetings. Might be gone most of the day." "Want company?" "Not today." He saw it just a flicker behind her eyes. Disappointment maybe, or recalculation. "All right," she said. "I'll catch up on reading. Maybe take Maya shopping." "Maya's staying in today. She's got a project she's working on." Vanessa nodded too quickly. "Sure. Maybe we'll bake something later then." Carter gave a short smile and left. But he didn't go far. From the garage, he circled around to the guest house out back where Reed and his two-man security team had spent the night setting up a mobile command station. Cables snaked across the hardwood floor, feeding into thermal monitors, audio interceptors, and video logs. Reed, graying and built like a linebacker who never quite retired, nodded when Carter stepped in. "She's up," Reed said. Her phone pinged a connection to that offshore server at 6:12 a.m. "She's already transmitting?" Carter asked. "She's testing your movements, gauging your patterns." "What about Miles?" Reed turned his monitor. "He just booked a one-way ticket to DC, leaves tomorrow. No luggage, no return flight. I think this thing's coming to a head." Carter stared at the screen. "It's going to end today." Reed crossed his arms. "You sure you're ready for this?" "I'm not the one who needs to be ready." He turned toward the second monitor, where Maya sat at her desk in her room, hoodie pulled tight over her head, typing like her life depended on it. In a way, it did. Back in the main house, Vanessa paced the hallway, speaking softly into her phone, her tone dipped in sugar. "I'm telling you, he's acting different," she whispered. "More guarded." There was a pause. No, not yet. I need more time. He's still building that neural mesh, and I need the latest framework before we extract." Another pause. "I'll get it. He trusts me." She ended the call and turned only to find Maya standing there. Vanessa forced a smile. "Hey, sweetheart, didn't see you." Maya didn't smile back. "Uncle Carter says I should work in my room today." Vanessa crouched slightly. "Of course. That's smart. You're such a bright girl." Maya's eyes didn't blink. "Are you going to be here when he gets back?" The question was quiet, but it landed like a slap. Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" Vanessa said, standing up straighter. Maya nodded and walked away. In the command trailer, Carter watched the exchange on a split screen. Reed shook his head. "Kid's got more steel than half my team." "She's been through worse than most adults ever will," Carter said. "And she's still here, still looking out for me." By mid-afternoon, Carter returned home under the pretense of forgetting his laptop. Vanessa greeted him with open arms, but he sidestepped the hug again, heading straight for the living room. He opened his laptop and pretended to log into work. In truth, everything he did that day, every keystroke, every phone call was part of the trap. At 4:02 p.m., he sent a dummy file labeled NMAI NeuroSync Prototype Final to his desktop and accidentally left it open while stepping away for a call. Vanessa, who was reading on the couch, didn't even hesitate. The moment he disappeared into the kitchen, she sprang into motion, pulling her phone and scanning the screen with a small, flat device Carter hadn't seen before. It was sleek military grade, and it transmitted the file in under 20 seconds. Reed's voice crackled over the earpiece in Carter's ear. She took the bait, sending everything to the Cayman's node. "Copy that," Carter whispered. But the real coup came 15 minutes later. Miles walked in through the back entrance, claiming he had a meeting with Carter. Vanessa, not expecting him so early, panicked just briefly, but it was long enough. "Why are you here?" she hissed. "We need to move up the timeline," Miles said. "He's slipping." "You said tomorrow." "I don't care. I want it now." Maya, sitting quietly in the hallway nook, recorded every word on her tablet. Carter waited 2 more minutes. Then he stepped back into the room. Miles and Vanessa turned, their smiles pasted on in panic. "Didn't know you had guests," Carter said. Miles cleared his throat. "Just dropping by. Thought we could catch up." "I thought you were flying to DC tomorrow." Miles blinked. "Who told you that?" Carter didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to the bar and poured a drink. "To catching up," he said, raising his glass. Vanessa's voice was a little too cheerful. Actually, Miles was just leaving. "No," Carter said, calm. "He can stay." He gestured to the living room chairs. "Both of you, sit." Something in his tone made them obey. Reed entered seconds later with 2 more men in civilian clothes, each one subtly armed. Vanessa rose immediately. "What is this?" "Please," Carter said, motioning her down again. "We're just having a conversation. A very overdue one." He turned to the large wall monitor and tapped a button. The living room screen lit up showing footage of Vanessa transferring the files, then Miles receiving them, then her whispering on the phone. Vanessa's face went bloodless. Miles stiffened. "You bugged me?" she asked. "No," Carter said. "You bugged me. I just found your bugs before you did." Silence stretched. "You don't understand," Vanessa said, her voice starting to crack. "I didn't mean to fall in love with you. It was supposed to be a job." "But you did fall in love?" he asked. Yes. I think so. Maybe. But I had no choice. You had every choice," Carter cut in. "You walked into my home, slept in my bed, lied to a child." He turned to Miles. "And you after everything I did for you." Miles stood slowly. "Carter, come on, let's not turn this into something it's not." "No?" Carter's voice was sharp now. "Because what it is treason." Reed stepped forward, reading Miles and Vanessa their rights. As they were led out in cuffs, Maya stepped into the room, watching silently. Carter turned to her. "You okay?" Maya nodded. "Are you?" He crouched and pulled her close. "I am now." And as the front door closed behind the betrayers, Carter knew this was only the beginning. Justice had spoken, but trust that would take time to rebuild. The morning after Vanessa and Miles were taken into custody, the mansion stood in an unnatural stillness. It wasn't the silence of calm, but the pause after a storm, when everything feels too quiet to trust. Carter sat at the edge of his bed, still in the clothes he'd slept in. He hadn't turned on his phone, hadn't opened his laptop. The weight of betrayal hung heavy across his shoulders. He pressed a hand over his eyes, exhaling slowly. It wasn't the loss of Vanessa that tore at him. It was the truth of how close he'd come to losing everything. And Maya, if it hadn't been for her. A soft knock came from the hallway. Carter turned. "Come in," he said, voice low. Maya stepped in wearing her oversized hoodie and fuzzy socks. She held a mug in both hands. "I brought you coffee," she said, carefully walking it over. "I didn't know how you like it, so I just made it the way you made it for me last week." Carter took the mug, his fingers brushing hers. "Thank you, sweetheart." She sat at the foot of the bed, swinging her legs gently. "Is it over now?" "I wish I could say yes." He sipped the coffee. It was a little sweet, a little strong, just like her. But taking them down doesn't mean it's done. I have to fix the damage. Will they go to jail? Most likely, he said. But they won't be alone in there. Reed uncovered more names last night. This was bigger than just them. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, "Do you trust anyone now?" Carter looked at her. "I trust you." That answer made her lips pull into a tiny smile. Downstairs, Reed was already setting up the next phase. The mobile unit was replaced by a secure server, air-gapped from all external networks. He nodded when Carter entered the study. "I've been up since 4 a.m., Reed grunted. "Got 3 forensic analysts combing through the data we intercepted. Turns out Miles was just the tip of the iceberg. Who's deeper? Board members. One of the VPs in R&D. Hell, even a guy in accounting flagged." Carter paced. "How did this happen under my nose? Because you trusted them to do their jobs. And because they never moved against you directly until her." Carter clenched his jaw. "She knew everything about my life. Everything." Reed tapped the files. "That's what made her valuable. They studied you like a blueprint. Your patterns, your habits, even your emotional triggers. Hell, they probably knew your favorite jazz artist before she ever shook your hand." There was a pause. "They played a long game," Carter muttered. "Yeah," Reed said. "But they lost." At lunch, Carter took Maya out to a small cafe in Midtown, an old diner with red vinyl booths and chipped mugs, a place he hadn't been in years. A quiet return to the familiar. The waitress, a woman in her 60s named Bernice, recognized him instantly. "Well, if it isn't Mr. William," she exclaimed, nearly dropping her pad. "Been what in years?" "Something like that," Carter said, his smile warming slightly. "And this is Maya." Maya extended a hand politely. "Nice to meet you." Bernice beamed. "Oh, she's got manners. I like her already." As they sat and ordered pancakes and eggs, Carter leaned across the table. "Why didn't you tell me about the camera the moment you saw it?" Maya stirred syrup into her milk. "I didn't want to sound crazy. I thought maybe it was for security. Then I watched Vanessa, and the way she'd always stand in certain spots, like she was being watched. Or performing. You saw what I didn't." "I don't know if I saw it. I just felt something was wrong. Like how you know when a song's off key, even if you don't know music." Carter nodded, impressed. "That instinct? Don't ever ignore it." Later that afternoon, back at the estate, Reed summoned Carter into the library. He stood beside a corkboard filled with printed emails, call logs, photos, maps. "We need to talk about New York," Reed said grimly. Carter stepped closer. "What happened?" "We traced the financial channels. One of your subsidiaries, Glasstech Labsha's, been funneling data through a shell company registered out of Brooklyn. And guess who signed the merger forms last spring?" Carter didn't have to ask. "Vanessa. Right before you proposed. Right before she started pushing you to expand into East Coast data integration. It was a setup from the beginning." Carter's hands balled into fists. "What do we do?" he asked. "We go to the source, quietly. No press, no announcements. We fly out tonight." Carter glanced toward the hallway, where Maya's laughter echoed faintly from the sunroom. "She comes with us." Reed raised a brow. "To New York? She's already been in the middle of this, and I trust her. Plus, I don't want her out of my sight again." They flew out that evening on Carter's private jet. Maya curled up beside him, headphones on, watching Hidden Figures. Carter glanced down at her every so often, the soft blue glow of the screen lighting up her small face. She had no idea how much she'd changed his life in just a week. In New York, they checked into a discreet boutique hotel near Soho. No staff recognized them. No headlines followed. The next morning, Carter and Reed made their way to a warehouse district on the East River. Glasstech's branch office stood sandwiched between an import company and a nondescript storage facility. From the outside, it looked like any startup satellite. But inside rows of black servers, blinking red and green, told a different story. "This place doesn't just duplicate files," Reed whispered. "It replicates entire networks. It's a ghost image of your company's mainframe." Carter's stomach dropped. "They weren't stealing pieces of your data," Reed said. "They were building their own version of it, preparing to replace you." A man in a crisp suit stepped into the room. "Mr. William, didn't expect you so soon." Carter turned. "Who are you?" "Name's Eric Vaughn. I'm the acting director here. Or, I was." "Cut the polite act," Carter said. We've traced your payments. We know about the offshore links. This place exists to dismantle everything I built." Eric's smirk dropped. "You're too late." "I don't think so," Reed said, tossing a folder onto the nearest desk. "Signed confession from Vanessa Lane, backed by 2 terabytes of server data. It's enough to bury this place." Eric's eyes flicked to the folder, then to Carter. "You're bluffing." Carter stepped forward, voice low. "I'm not the man who builds $1 billion company and doesn't know how to protect it. You took my trust. You twisted it. And now, you'll watch it come down." As they left the building, federal agents arrived in unmarked SUVs. Eric was escorted out in cuffs. From across the street, Maya stood beside a street vendor, munching a pretzel. "Was that one of the bad guys?" she asked when Carter approached. "Yeah," Carter said. "One of the last." "Good," she said, wiping her hands. "Let's go home now." Carter paused. Home. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was where she was. And after everything, that was all that mattered. Carter Williams stood silently in front of the old upright piano tucked away in the corner of his study. His fingers hovered over the ivory keys, unmoving. He hadn't played since his brother died the accident that had taken both Maya's parents. But now, with the chaos momentarily quiet, the echoes of the past called to him in a language no camera could record. The key of memory. He pressed a single note. C. It rang out clear and low. Behind him, Maya's soft footsteps approached, carrying with them the delicate hesitation of someone too wise for her age. "Uncle Carter?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned halfway. "Hey, sweetheart. Couldn't sleep?" She shook her head and patted across the hardwood floor in her socks. "I keep thinking about Vanessa, and Miles, and the guy in New York. I know they're gone now, but it's like they left something behind. Not stuff, but a feeling." Carter studied her face, noting how she pulled her sleeves over her hands, the way her gaze stayed low. "What kind of feeling? Like the house is still watching?" He closed the piano and reached for her hand. "That's not nothing," he said quietly. "It's your instinct. And we trust it, remember?" Maya nodded, but didn't smile. Carter lifted her onto the bench beside him. "How about a lullaby?" Her brow furrowed. "Do you remember any?" He smiled softly, fingers moving into position. "I remember one your dad and I used to sing when we were kids. Let's see how far my memory goes." As he played a gentle tune, Maya leaned against his side, eyes drifting shut to the sound of long-forgotten comfort. In that small, flickering moment, the mansion wasn't haunted by betrayal, but warmed by the flicker of healing. The next morning brought with it new momentum. Reed arrived early, briefcase in hand, his posture stiffer than usual. "We've got another issue," he said as Carter joined him on the back patio, the Atlanta sun just rising beyond the tree line. Carter took a sip from his coffee. "Of course we do. What is it this time?" Reed handed him a document. "Board meeting. Emergency call-in. 2 members want a vote of no confidence. They think your emotional involvement in the Vanessa scandal makes you unfit to lead." Carter's jaw tensed. "They want me out of my own company." "Worse," Reed replied. "They want to split the company, section it off, and sell it in pieces. Easier for shareholders to manage, harder to trace liabilities." "Who's pushing it?" "Elliot Green and Tabitha Claymore. Old money, no loyalty. Vanessa gave them a reason." Carter paced the length of the patio, staring out at the morning mist curling across the lawn. "If they think I'll go quietly, they haven't been paying attention." Reed opened his laptop. "I pulled up their history. Claymore has financial ties to the very hedge fund that backed the dummy shell in Brooklyn. She's not just scared of liability, she's covering her own involvement." Carter leaned over the table. "Then we expose her." "Not yet. We don't have enough to make it stick in court." "I don't need court," Carter said, eyes narrowing. "I need clarity. Get me everything. I want to look her in the eye when I burn her bridges." Later that afternoon, Maya helped rearrange the photo wall in the hallway. She held up a framed picture of her parents, the one taken at Lake Lanier 2 summers ago. The sun had lit her mother's curls like wildfire, and her dad's arm had been slung proudly around her. Carter stepped in, pausing at the sight. "That was a good day," he said. "Yeah," Maya whispered. "They said I swam like a fish, but I hated the lake water." He smiled, and together they hung the frame near the center, surrounded by older black and white photos of Carter's parents and uncles. "Why do people do bad things, Uncle Carter?" Maya asked suddenly. "Even when they already have everything?" Carter sat on the floor beside her. "Because having everything on the outside doesn't mean they feel full on the inside. Some people think taking more will finally fill that hole, but it never does." Maya was quiet, her fingers tracing the wood of the frame. "I don't ever want to be like that." He put his arm around her. "You won't. You have heart." That evening, Carter stood in the towering glass conference room, overlooking the downtown skyline. The emergency board meeting had begun. Elliot Green cleared his throat. "Carter, let's be honest. The company has suffered reputational damage. Investors are nervous. Stockholders are pulling out. We need stable leadership, not someone personally entangled in a scandal." Carter's gaze was calm. "You mean I should step down because I refuse to ignore a criminal conspiracy happening under my roof?" Tabitha leaned forward, voice silky and poisonous. "It's about perception. Perception shapes value. And right now, your name triggers doubt. Let me ask you both something," Carter said slowly. "Do you think it's coincidence that the woman who sabotaged my company also happened to push for policies you both financially benefited from?" Elliot stiffened. "Be careful, Carter." "I'm done being careful," he replied. "You pushed this meeting under emergency protocol, so let's treat it like an emergency. I propose an open audit of every board member's financial history over the last 2 years, including offshore transactions." Tabitha's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare." Oh, I would," he said. "And I've already started." He gestured to the door. Reed stepped in, holding a thick folder. "Forensic accounting," Carter said. "Care to take a look?" The room went quiet as Reed distributed copies. Pages rustled, tension crackled. Elliot was the first to speak. "You don't have the authority." "I own the authority," Carter cut in. "And anyone who doesn't want to answer for their part can walk out now." Nobody moved. "Thought so," he said. Later that night, Carter sat alone in the living room, a fire crackling softly. He should have felt victorious, but instead he felt tired, not defeated, just worn in a deeper way, like something inside him had been cracked open and hadn't quite healed. Maya crept in, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Did you win?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "We stopped them. For now." She crawled onto the couch beside him. "Then why do you look sad?" He paused. "Because it never should have gotten this far. I kept thinking I could outwork betrayal. But the truth is, sometimes, the people closest to you don't want to be saved. They just want to win." Maya leaned her head against his arm. "You still have me." Carter smiled. "That's the only win I really care about." And in that moment, the fire, the silence, the echo of a piano key pressed hours ago, it all wrapped around them like the closing of a wound. Not healed, but finally beginning to close. The following morning, the air in the William estate felt oddly lighter, like something poisonous had finally been exhaled. But Carter William knew better than to let relief dull his vigilance. Betrayal didn't vanish, it retreated, regrouped, and re-emerged smarter. And in this case, he hadn't yet touched the center of the rot. Vanessa was still out there, and she knew he knew. Downstairs, in the sunlit kitchen, Maya was making toast. She wore one of Carter's old t-shirts, trailing just past her knees, and her hair was in its usual morning mess of tight, frizzy curls. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said, not looking up. Carter poured himself coffee. "Didn't. Too much thinking." Maya handed him a slice of toast. "That's how you get those lines in your forehead." He chuckled, a soft, tired sound. "You mean the ones that make me look wise and mysterious?" "I mean the ones that make you look worried and old," she said, finally smiling. He took the toast and ruffled her hair. "You're cruel in the mornings." "No, just honest," she replied, hopping up onto a bar stool. Then, quieter, "Are you going after her?" Carter paused. He didn't need to ask who her was. "Yes," he said finally, "but not the way you think. I need proof, Maya. Not revenge, not emotion, something undeniable, something that ends this." Maya nodded slowly, expression thoughtful. "Then you need help." Carter raised an eyebrow. "You volunteering?" She nodded. "I've been thinking about that camera, and the closet next to your office." He looked at her sharply. "What about it?" "I heard something once, like clicking, It was late, and I couldn't sleep. I thought maybe you were just watching something, but maybe it was more. Carter leaned in. You think the closet's the entry point? I think someone used it. Maybe to change the battery, or to check recordings. That was enough. 10 minutes later, they stood together outside the closet door. Carter had Reed meet them there with a discreet security tech named Owen Young. Quiet, brilliant, and absolutely loyal. Owen swept the area with a detection wand. It gave a soft beep near the crown molding above the doorframe. There, he said. Infrared line was broken. That's likely the receiver point. He climbed a small ladder and opened the paneling. Inside, tucked behind insulation and nearly invisible without close inspection, was a black signal booster the size of a deck of cards. Carter took it and turned it over. No manufacturer logo. No ID tag. Owen ran a quick scan. Encrypted broadcast. Frequency hopping every 3 seconds. It's not Wi-Fi based. Military-grade RF. Carter's jaw tightened. Vanessa didn't just want to spy on Mesh, wanted it to be untraceable. Reed frowned, which means she wasn't working alone. No regular private investigator sets up gear like this. Carter nodded. Call in Leon. Reed blinked. Leon? I know we haven't talked in years, Carter said, but I trust him. He's the only one who's ever done what I'm about to ask. An hour later, Leon Barksdale walked into the estate. He was a thick, no-nonsense man in his 50s, bald with deep lines around his eyes and a bullet scar visible above his collarbone. Been a long time, Carter, he said, shaking his hand firmly. Not long enough, Carter replied. But I need your help. Leon smiled faintly. When you left the agency, you said you'd never pull favors. You said you were done. I lied, Carter said simply. They went after my family. Leon's smile disappeared. Okay, tell me everything. They sat down in the study with the recovered signal booster and the schematics of Carter's office layout. Owen walked Leon through the tech setup. Leon listened, silent, then stood. She's ex-military. Special intel or mercenary. Hire, maybe both. She's not after your money. She's after your assets, patents, proprietary code. Something that's not in public IPO filings. Carter nodded grimly. She asked about Project Halcyon 2 weeks ago. Just casually. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. Leon looked up sharply. You never filed the Halcyon Core AI source with the patent office, right? Number. It's on a closed offline mainframe in the server room. Only Reed and I have the access code. Leon shook his head. Then she's not just spying. She's preparing for theft. Or worse. Reed stepped forward. What do we do? Leon's answer was immediate. Set the trap. That night, Carter invited Vanessa back to the estate. She hadn't expected Ide could see it in her stiff posture and her overly bright smile as she stepped through the door wearing a navy silk dress and heels that whispered power. I thought you needed space, she said, her voice dripping concern. I did. I thought a lot, Carter said evenly. About everything. About us. He poured her wine, watched her watch him. Behind his eyes, the plan was already in motion. Maya was safely with a neighbor, and every corner of the estate was under silent surveillance. Leon's team had set it up with surgical precision. They sat by the fire, talked about nothing. Music, art, New York. She softened visibly, laughing like old times, and Carter let her. He leaned in closer. Her hand slid over his. Then he said quietly, Do you ever wonder what